Oh, sorry, Jesus, Dara, I was waiting for you to get started. You told me you were going to do the intro, and I'm sitting here waiting for the intro, and it never came.
What was that video? What do you think that video was?
That's just the video. That's just the start. Anyway, welcome everybody to the Under Center podcast.
It's the intro video.
We finally figured out our running order. Dara told me, hang on there, Phil. I'm just going to do the intro, and then you jump in and take it from here. You'll hear from Dara's noises in the background. He's a bit raspy. He overstretched himself on Super Bowl Sunday. He went down to the UCD festivities, I believe. Dara, sounds like it was a good night. I haven't seen anything. I'm judging only by the sound of your voice.
By the sound of my voice, it's a good indication. No, yeah, like I said, I went down to the Hardcore Bar or D2 or wherever it's called these days for the UCD event. Great, good night, really good night. There was about 15 of us, a few like former pirates and girlfriends and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was a really good night. Good, decent drink deals. You know, it's such a big place that I'd never felt overcrowded. You know, there was tons of TVs, so we found a nice spot outside, and they had it underneath a heater and watched the game there, which was good. Had a decent bit of food served until late. I didn't plan for my voice to lose my voice, obviously, but there was a group of people behind us, and they were American and they were 49er fans. And anytime the 49ers did anything positive, just screaming and going mad. And I felt like they were like right in my ear. So me and Lee, if you know from the Pirates, we both looked at each other and were like, right. Anytime the Chiefs do that and good, we absolutely lost it and started shouting and going mental as well, because there was a huge 49er majority in the place. So somebody had to stick up for the Chiefs, and most notably, of course, for Taylor Swift. She got booed anytime she was on the screen. But yeah, really, really good night. Lost my voice. Getting home wasn't too good. They obviously went into overtime. I think the game finished by 4:15 in the morning or something like that. Not a car on the road when we got out, so we had to walk all the way to the Keys, and then thankfully the 15 bus is 24 hours, so we had to get the 15 bus back to a point in Coolock where a taxi would pick us up. So I think it was the guts of around 6 o'clock in the morning by the time we got home, and it was just off. Like, delighted the Chiefs won, which we'll obviously get into, but also like kind of pissed that I couldn't just go straight home to bed. Instead I had to make the long journey home. But thank you to UCD for a fantastic night. Ran into a few of the UCD lads. Obviously, we were just chatting about the season and stuff like that before coming NFI season, which we'll be talking about more in the next few weeks. But this is, of course, going to be a Super Bowl only show. But yeah, that was my tale of Sunday night. What did you guys do?
Yeah, Dara, sore throat. I asked him a simple question. Did you enjoy the night? 10-minute monologue later, and he's still going. So the voice is obviously not as bad as he's making out. Al, did you watch
Fionn,
the game?
I'm trying to get clips here. I'm trying to get clips
for
this for you.
Always thinking of the social media output. I'm just here rambling, going off in all sorts of stupid directions. You'll fix this all in post, even if it's live. Al, did you watch the game live, or did you follow
up? I did watch the game live. I stayed at home because I was in work yesterday, so unfortunately I had to be up very early the next day, so I only got about 2 hours sleep. But yeah, it was a good game. I was stressed at the end in overtime, to say the least, because obviously, you know, I haven't been shy about my dislike for the 49ers, so I don't think I could have handled them winning.
Based mostly on allegiance, I think. Rain, myself and yourself, we didn't watch it together, but we did we followed up, I believe, after the Super Bowl. You didn't watch it live, did you?
Yeah, I had a plan to put on the blinders and just, you know, like that episode of How I Met Your Mother, like total blackout. But I woke up to a fucking text from Al McGrath that spoiled the whole thing. So
no, you didn't. I sent that at 11:45. Thanks very much. I did
All right,
not
okay, I
spoil the
didn't
whole
see,
thing.
but I was just like, well, fuck, that means the Chiefs won the game. But,
Never know, Rian. He might have just finished watching it there half hour before we came on air. Like,
genuinely, a chance to watch. My life is hectic as hell.
so yeah, I
No.
did the same. I watched it back on Monday evening after work. I didn't have the luxury of staying up, but yeah, as I suppose we dive into it. Let's start at the general vibes. I think these reviews on a single game is always a little bit weird. I mean, everyone who's tuning in here almost certainly has watched it by now, so we'll do our best to give as much analysis and insight from the kind of the football playing aspect of things that we know about, and maybe some of the stories that have gone on in the background if you're more a casual watcher and maybe don't follow the NFL inside and out. So bear with us if it's not a total breakdown of the game, but we'll kind of try and keep it as interesting as possible for everybody. I guess the first thing I want to do is start with the vibes. I imagine quite a lot of people watching who are the once a year NFLers, the Super Bowl only guys, probably watched that game and found it a little bit stodgy, not super full of action or action packed. Went to overtime. I thought that was more frequent. Turns out that's only the second time in a good long time that it's gone to overtime. So that was an interesting little fact that I picked up. But basically, my takeaway is for a football fan, a kind of a week-to-week football fan, two absolutely great defenses, especially in the first half. Wasn't necessarily that the offenses were doing anything stupid or wrong, just the defense was flying around, making big hits on both sides. Is that pretty much what you got from it? I know you had a little bit more stake in the game, if that makes sense. I'm neither a Chiefs fan, nor a 49ers fan, nor a hater of either team. So you've obviously got a bit more bias in you.
Yeah, I just think the Chiefs did what they have been doing all season, and that's they've sort of relied on like their defense adjusting to things and getting it right. And I don't know what it is about defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, but again came up with a fantastic plan, especially in that second half to stop the 49ers. Now, you could also maybe say the 49ers ran away from what they were actually doing well in the game. But, it's crazy to me that, like, in this off season where there's been, 8 head coaching job vacancies, not one request was put in for Spags to be even given an interview for a head coaching job, because he's shown he can do this for the last X number of years with not just the Chiefs, but also when he won it with the Giants as well as their defensive coordinator against Brady. So, obviously Mahomes gets the plaudits because, quarterback and everything, but that Chiefs defense won them that game.
Last time Steve Spagnuolo was a head coach was in 2011 for the then St. Louis Rams. I just did a quick Google there because I'm wondering if maybe there's some history there that when he has been a head coach in the past that it hasn't gone well for him. I don't know much at all about that time of Rams, so I couldn't really comment. But yeah, I think it's interesting, Darryl, what you mentioned about the Chiefs playing an excellent game on defense and then maybe the 49ers moving away from what was working for them. That's how I really felt it was. In the first half, I think they had the Chiefs enough off balance. I expected the first half to be as the second half was, if that makes sense, where the Chiefs defensive line is causing problems, defense is flying around, and on the back end, you've got some top-notch receiving talent or coverage in terms of McDuffie in a corner. I thought it was going to be hard, and I think the 49ers did a great job keeping them off balance, especially running rain. Is that how you see it? Did you think they let their foot up on the gas? And I guess to kind of give you something to answer maybe more in terms of a question, do you think that the 49ers were a little bit nervous about whether or not they could beat the Chiefs? Is it because they felt like they had to protect the lead once they got it, and maybe the Chiefs had the onus of chasing and could really push their foot to the floor and stay on the offensive? Is that what hampered the 49ers in the second half?
I think what hampered them more so was the fact that they allowed the Chiefs to stay in the game. And part of that was moving away from the run game, which was working well for them at the start of the game, albeit they had that big fumble down there inside the red zone. That didn't help out. But the 49ers could have been 20 points up before the Chiefs got on the board. And in a game like that, against a team like that, you really need to extend your lead, to put them away. You leave Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in a game, they are going to do the damage. So it's, a lot of questions need to be asked about the coaching performance on the 49ers side of the ball. Like I said, moving away from the running as well, with that insane call at the end of the game with receiving the football going into overtime. Questions do need to be asked, but certainly lessons will be learned. And I really liked how Brock Purdy played in that game. I know he didn't get the win, but he did have 3 go-ahead drives in the fourth quarter and overtime, of course. So yeah, he had a very nice game, and he has a bright future ahead of him.
Al, before we talk about the winning team, obviously, let's kind of stick with the 49ers team. I saw some comments coming out of L'Jarius Sneed that they wanted Brock Purdy to throw the ball against him. Now, I understand that some teams can see some limitations with Brock Purdy, but I feel like that was an interesting tactic. One, because he's pretty accurate, and he hasn't really had a problem passing the ball in terms of, sure, maybe that deep ball is maybe one criticism that he has. He doesn't have an absolutely ginormous arm, but he's got, if you listen to the Romo broadcast, he's got great anticipation. He really puts the ball in a nice spot, and from an eyeballs perspective, he really seems to throw the ball really nicely in terms of spiral and catchability of the ball. Do you think that was a good idea, or is this Sneed maybe talking after the game? Because I'm with Rian, I really didn't think Purdy had a pretty bad game, and I think you're the man to ask here, as with Darry, a little bit of an anti-49ers bias. So we'll see where you evaluated Purdy's game.
I thought Purdy was fine. He didn't blow the place up, but sure, he played a fine game. I think that's just a bit of shit talking after the game. They did a good job. McDuffie and Sneed, apart from a couple of goofs here and there, like they had a really good game, especially McDuffie. They just played solid defense, and they're just talking shit after the game. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Purdy was fine. I mean, my opinion hasn't changed a bit. Like, he's a good quarterback. Like he can make the throws. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's not that guy. And when they stopped leaning on Christian McCaffrey, you saw those limitations. They're not glaring, massive limitations, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. There is a distinction between the two players. So, like, he played a fine game.
I imagine that's probably I imagine that's probably a frustrating part if you're a 49ers fan, where you said, like, when they stopped relying on Christian McCaffrey. And I think the one thing that you have to give the 49ers offense is when they've got McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel moving, and you can kind of spread the ball, really run it heavy with McCaffrey, and then get the ball to Samuel in space and do some damage, whether it's on kind of on screen passes or deeper down the field, it can really throw teams off balance. And what I felt like was almost that Shanahan tried to get too clever. He didn't want to over-rely on McCaffrey and let the Chiefs tee off. But at the same time, that moved away from, as you said, I think Purdy is fantastic, specifically in the 49ers offense. And I'm not saying he's a system quarterback, but his limitations are covered by the strength of that offense in terms of the tight ends, the checkdowns, the run game. And they tried to get almost too clever, and not necessarily, they still played within them, but they were trying to move it around to players that I think were trying to sneak in under the Chiefs' radar. And that's what led them to kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit. I mean, McCaffrey was gashing him. He could have had a touchdown that first drive if it wasn't for the football. What do you think? Is that something, do you place on Purdy not being able to get the job done? Or do you think the 49ers were overconscious of the fact that everybody knows how good McCaffrey is, and they didn't want to give up what they felt was the kind of leverage they had by sprinkling him in as opposed to really working him?
I think they were just overthinking the game. They didn't like spread the ball around as much as they could have. I mean, they have tons of options. Kittle had 4 yards, 4 in the Super Bowl. Like, they didn't even look at him. Deebo was fine, but then he got injured, which was unfortunate. Ayuk was pretty good, and I can't remember the third receiver's name, but he's been pretty reliable for them as well. like you have all these options on offense, and then if you take away McCaffrey and you're not looking at Kittle, all of a sudden when you're facing good DBs like Snead and McDuffie, you're limiting yourself needlessly, And then there's the silly things like when McDuffie blocked the throw on 3rd and 4 near the end of the game. And then, overtime, leaving Chris Jones completely unblocked to break up a pass that would have got a first down. Just, overthinking it and just silly little execution mistakes that cost them the game. They could have won, but they let the Chiefs back into the game. I don't know why. Like they in the first half, they proved they were well able to, at least defensively, hold the Chiefs. But credit to Spagnuolo. He's a really good defensive coordinator. He adjusted and kind of shut the Niners down for the most part.
And Dara, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to in response to that, and I don't like that sort of saying that. I've heard a lot of people say that the 49ers let the Chiefs back into the game. The Chiefs earned their way back into that game, especially on that defense. You're saying that these small adjustments or these things that let Purdy down, it was because the defense forced it. Also, you said that Snead said, "Oh, we wanted him to throw it," because I think they relied on their backfield. Because if you look at, outside of Christian McCaffrey that got 80 yards receiving, and I think he had like 30 of them just on one play in overtime. Ayuk under 50 yards. Juwan Jennings under 50 yards. Deebo Samuel under 50 yards. Like you said, George Kittle, 2 receptions for 4 yards. This defense locked down the receiving threats, which meant Purdy didn't really have a chance to do well in this game. Okay, he did well in the first quarter, but we kind of all know, if you follow football for a while, that the first 2 offensive series for teams are scripted, and then you kind of go into what after that. I think that the game plan was right. They struggled with the run. They fixed it in the second half, and I think they always had an idea of how they were going to lock down the 49ers receivers. And like I said, that's one of the main reasons why I think they won that game, was because of this defensive plan they had.
And just going back to the whole Purdy thing, I'll be really quick on this, but that defense has done that to a lot of quote-unquote elite quarterbacks. I mean, they shut down, didn't shut down, but Tua basically did nothing against them. They beat, what's his name, the Bills. Josh Allen as well. He didn't have the best game throwing the football against them. This is a really good defensive unit. I'm not going to put any stock into the fact that Purdy wasn't able to score 3 touchdowns and go for 400 yards against that team.
Okay, so guys, before we move on to the Chiefs, my last thing here is I'm going to say that the 49ers lost this Super Bowl. The Chiefs didn't win it. And the reason is they had that absolutely crushing fumble off the kick that set up the touchdown, the first touchdown for the Chiefs. And then that set them up in field position that up until that point in the game, they were not able to get to themselves. And then secondly, they had Moody miss that PAT, having done so several times already this year. He's really, I think, let the 49ers down. Much bigger than the coaching, much bigger than the offense. And you don't like the Americans never like to put this on a single guy. But I'm saying this, I think special teams in general lost it for the 49ers. And I think Moody specifically really put them in a tough spot. It would have forced the Chiefs to have to go for a touchdown on that last drive. Everything else staying the same. And I know you get into all this if, buts, or maybes in terms of once you start speculating about how the game's going to go. But for me, that's what it came down to. The 49ers couldn't finish, couldn't clinch. And the Chiefs, with Mahomes, flawless as always, can't take that away from them. But really, it was the 49ers game to lose, and they lost it. Rian, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. There were a few plays out there that they left out there, points left on the board, points given up based on mistakes. I think you're being maybe a little bit harsh on the muffed punt. That one was kind of, the guy was engaged in a block, wasn't looking where the football was, and it bounced off his leg. That's unfortunate. But like you said, Jake Moody missing PATs in the biggest game of his life, it's not really an acceptable thing. But I mean, I'm not going to say that the 49ers lost this game as opposed to the Chiefs winning it. The Chiefs absolutely deserved to win that game, and they did so with class. So I'm going to say it was just a hard-fought game between the two teams, and the better team came out on top.
Yeah, I'll transitioning then obviously into this, into the Chiefs side of the Super Bowl. Fantastic game as always from Patrick Mahomes. He seems to have that air of inevitability about him where it doesn't matter what you're doing or how you've got him tied up in the first quarter, the first half, or even the first three quarters, as the last three Super Bowls have been. He always finds a way, and he never seems to make mistakes. He threw that one interception this Super Bowl, but my God, he just seemed to always have the right decision. And when he really needed to, a play was made. You saw them. They kept the ball in his hand in overtime. He had two fantastic rushes that really took the wind out of the 49ers' sails on defense. Is there anything stopping Mahomes? I think it's very obvious now that this man has a legit chance at winning more Super Bowls than Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton. I don't have a ton to add on that. I mean, he's so good. Like you saw it in the game. Like he was getting really frustrated at points, but he was never flustered. He was always locked in. Next play, whatever that just happened. Whatever, next play, next drive, whatever it is. He was locked in the entire game. And then once, they got into a flow on offense and, the 49ers started breaking down just a tiny bit. They were finding a couple of little chinks in the armor and, they just started attacking it. And they did what the 49ers weren't doing, which was spreading the ball around in the second half. After, Kelsey being completely invisible, he got the ball a ton. Pacheco was still, despite, fumbling it, 2 or 3 times or something. He
fumbled it once, didn't he?
Just once, I think. Was my memory.
I only remembered one. I only remembered one.
He kind of did a half fumble where he was getting tackled.
Oh, yeah, the pitch.
Right.
It was like the shoulder.
Yeah.
That was
yeah. In my head, it was more, but yeah, like they just kind of got their shit together and played better football and started spreading the ball around more, and Mahomes didn't make any mistakes. He was good, and that's why they're the first team to. Well, he was better than good. That's why they're the first team in 20 years to win back-to-back Super Bowls.
Dara, I got to jump off for 2 seconds. The joys of live TV. Can you tee up the next question, and I'll be back in 2 seconds. Or
I actually have a question.
Monologue.
Green, go ahead first.
Answer the same question that Al just got, which was about basically Mahomes' legacy. I think Mahomes can go the whole rest of his career without winning another Super Bowl, and he is still unquestionably the best player to ever play in the NFL, just from sheer talent alone. I know we talk about Brady and the 6 rings, but everything that Brady could do, Mahomes can do better. He has the same accuracy on the deep ball. He has the same kind of pocket presence, but he is a better athlete. And I just think he's the best player that has ever been. And it's kind of been proven, right? He's got 3 rings now, and he's not even 30 years old. He is well on his way to doing that. But even if the Chiefs collapse and they are locked in with that big, long 10-year contract that they have with Mahomes, I still think he is the best to ever do.
There's a few ifs for me on that before I could say that. First one is, Brady had Belichick throughout the whole of his career. That's what got him the 5 rings. Sorry, he got the 6th in Tampa, obviously. Andy Reid is not going to be there for all of Patrick Mahomes' career. So what the team do when Andy Reid eventually decides that he no longer wants to coach, I think is going to be important. Because you're going to have to make sure that relationship is good for the success to continue. Also, what happens when Travis Kelce decides that he's not playing anymore? it's very hard to get that sort of relationship going. I know Brady had Gronk for all his career, but again, Mahomes won't have Kelsey for all his career. And then also one last thing, Brady left and did it somewhere else in Tampa. Mahomes would have to go somewhere else and do it. And I think there's a team in the Pacific Northwest that have just got a new head coach and might be looking for a quarterback. So I think if he wants to do it somewhere else, no, I think he could do it this year if he wants. He's won it too many times there, Kansas City. Come up and have a real challenge.
New challenge.
Yeah, we only need to clear up about 50 million in cap. It's fine.
I'd do it.
That's 50 million per year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to consider when you're saying, like, are we talking just outright best football player of all time? I think there's a few players that might be in contention. Like, you have like best player at any given position. Like,
okay, let's say the quarterback.
I don't.
Just the quarterback.
Okay, position. Quarterback position, yeah, like for sure. I think it's hard to compare the two players though, because you can't. I mean, I don't think you could find two different players in Brady and Mahomes. And then, there really is a genuine argument, whatever about rings, that Peyton Manning was a better player, like just pure football player. I don't know if it's, a simple answer like, yes, Mahomes is going to go down as the best player, the best quarterback ever. Because I think there's a bunch of players that you could say that about. And they're so different. It's so hard to say who really was the best. If you're talking about, just regardless of position, I mean, I don't know. There's been tons of players, most recently Aaron Donald has been just as dominant as a player, could possibly be. TJ Watt.
Robbed of Defensive Player of the Year, by the way. Robbed.
JJ Watt, for 3 years was, the most defensive or the most dominant player.
The greatest football player ever for 3 years.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I know it was really short, but like, yeah.
Well,
like
this is it. Like, you have to call it somewhere. Do you know what I mean? I guess it's exactly where you're going at. Like, sure, the greatest is the greatest until but is the greatest cornerback worth less than the greatest quarterback just because he plays cornerback and not quarterback? And I think that's a big.
Well, the greatest and most valuable are two different conversations.
Sure. But I think ultimately, right, it's got to come down to who wins the most Super Bowls at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be the greatest player ever, but that's what it's all about, right?
It's just going to be like it's going to be a LeBron versus or MJ sort of type debate. That's what it's going to be for NFL fans.
Yeah,
you're going to have but you're going to have the younger generation that are going to say Mahomes is the best player ever, but you'll have the older generation saying, well, Jordan was so much better in his time because he won 6 and LeBron I think he actually has 3.
I think.
So it's kind of it's actually the same right now in terms of like rings, So
LeBron is like 80 years old, right?
Yeah, he's now Brady. He's got no hope of winning.
He's the same age. He's the same age as Pete Carroll now. Yeah,
but that's the point, right? Like, who is the greatest? I think is always up for it's your generation. It's whether you like offense, defense, like how the rules are set up. They're gonna do, but ultimately, I think if you're a fan, right, if it's your team, you want the guy who wins all the Super Bowls. So I think to the point until Mahomes wins the same amount of Super Bowls as Brady, it's like obviously it's Brady. He won all the Super Bowls. And it's nothing about the player. Like, Rian, you're shaking your head going crazy here. What you disagree?
Because you can't just put it down to rings. Who's a better quarterback, Joe Flacco or Dan Marino?
But that's what I'm saying. It's got nothing to do with who's a better quarterback. The whole point of the game is to win the championship. That's it. It doesn't matter whether you do it with your eyes closed the entire time or you need literally a scooter to bring you up and down the field. You gotta win, and if you can win, then that's at least for me. I agree with you, and this is the whole point, right? Do I think Tom Brady is the greatest athlete or even football player ever? No. But ultimately, the whole point is to win the championship. And so the person who wins the championship the most, for me, that's got to come there. But, and I missed all the previous conversations, so probably I'm coming in from a totally different, wrong angle. But how do you stop Mahomes and Kelsey from now on? Like, because this could go on for another 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Maybe not with Kelsey, but certainly, maybe not with Kelsey, but certainly with Mahomes. And he's done it. When he lost Tyreek Hill, everybody said, well, that's the offense gone out the window. They never really had a running game. Now Isaiah Pacheco's there. He can do it with everybody. So the question is, how do you stop him? I think until the NFL comes up with some sort of hybrid defender that is not an outside linebacker and not a safety that can actually match up one-on-one with these tight ends and cover them in space and make tackles in the run game, I think they're going to be dominant for as long as the NFL keeps drafting them in.
Well, you say it as if the tight ends grow on trees. These elite tight ends.
No,
there are 3 in the league who do it on a regular basis.
That's what I'm saying, and that's what makes them so rare, right? That there's only ever 3, but the 3 that we have at the moment are fantastic and they're lethal. And when you don't get Kittle involved, you get offenses like this. And when you can get Kelsey involved after a quiet first half, he changes the game. We saw that one, the kind of the crosser across the middle where he had Wagner turned upside down, and Wagner's one of, if not the best linebacker in the game right now, and he turned him inside out. And kind of that's where I'm coming from, it is until the NFL gets elite linebackers that can match up. And I agree, Ryan, you're not going to try and, first of all, you won't be able to draft those guys either. They'll be rare as diamonds. But I think until you figure out a body type or a play style that counters that elite middle out, like kind of not blocking, not receiving, this kind of do-it-all tight end, and there's not many of them, but the ones that are there are getting to the Super Bowl year in, year out. You got Mark Andrews as well, I think, is in that category if he stays healthy. I think the defenses are going to have to do something to match up better. You can't have Kelsey turning Wagner inside out in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. That's just unplayable. Al, what do you think?
I think the thing with Mahomes and Kelsey that makes them so special and almost unstoppable at times is they just have this great connection. Like on each play, like Travis Kelsey goes off script a lot. Like every other game you'll see some film guy on Twitter or whatever just raving about like, oh, he was supposed to run this, but then he spotted the safety here or something and he ran this, and Mahomes was like, all right, Grant, easy completion, 15, 20 yards. And he does it multiple times every game. That, while it sounds all well and good and simple, it's like, oh yeah, receivers and tight ends improvising, it's actually incredibly hard to do and have that connection between your quarterback and your tight end. While Kelsey is able to, play at a reasonably high level as long as he stays healthy, I don't think there's a way you can defend that, because you can only defend against what you know. The defenders, see like, oh, he's, running a dig or whatever, but then, he just reverses it or goes and runs a completely different route and turns you around. You can't defend against that. So you're going to stop him for sure. Like he's not Gronk, but like, I don't think you'll be able to ever, shut him down for a season. He's had bad games where he's done fuck all, plenty this year, but like I don't think he's ever going to have a season where he has like 200 or 300 yards and he just completely falls apart.
Well, I think what's special about Kelsey is that he has an exceptional football mind, right? He just understands every single little thing about what the defense is doing and how he can gain leverage over that defense. And that doesn't come around very often, particularly in the tight end position. My mind springs immediately to Gronkowski, who was asked in his interviews entering the league what he should do on a given play in kind of a film study. His response to every single one of them was, doesn't matter, get me the football. He is not Gronk. He has got a special football mind. And I think that is what's aiding him as he gets older. We see he has lost a step. Kelsey has lost a step in these last couple of years, but he is still beating defenders and getting into positions. I've never seen someone be as wide open on as many plays in my life, and that is down to his football knowledge and, as Al said, his connection with Patrick Mahomes.
Well, Dara, let's flip this question then for you. We've had the lads discuss about what defenses can kind of do to slow it down, and the consensus is to be absolutely nothing. We just have to wait till Kelsey retires and then hope no one else comes along. But now I'm going to put you in the shoes of the Chiefs GM, who Al probably knows the name of. I have no clue. How do you make the Chiefs better and go and triple repeat? Back to back to back. What do you do in the off season? Where do you go? Where is the weakness, and how do you, other than just re-sign all your free agents, like what's the game plan here? Stay competitive.
The very first thing I would do is I would drive MVS to the airport, drop his bags, and run away. Because that play where
paying him.
that play I think was in the fourth quarter, was in overtime. I can't remember, but where he was tackled, but he got back up and then was taken 4 or 5 yards backwards again. Yeah,
we talked about elite football brains. That is not one of them.
That's not.
And look, let's give. I fully agree. The man has not performed this year. But when you get tackled in an NFL game, your world is literally spinning around. All he felt was, "I'm after breaking the tackle." I'd say he had the same thought as the rest of us when he looked up, and then there was 3 Niners defenders. Now, maybe the rest of us could have guessed that there'd be 3 Niners defenders there, but it's not like he was standing there, juked the tackle, could have gone down, and then decided to stand back up and get tackled again. He was trying to make a play in the Super Bowl, and he got caught out a little bit. So I'll give MVS that on that play. But was he responsible for the one, or am I thinking of the 49ers where somebody ran a route, an option route up the middle, and could have kept running, but didn't? I think that was 49ers.
That was Brandon Ayuk in the first quarter, second quarter, something like that. But no, we saw the progression of Rashee Rice towards the end of the season, who played very well on Sunday as well. But they still need to get some good wide receiver depth there. Sky Moore probably didn't take the leap in the second season that they wanted them to.
But they have Kadarius Toney, the best player ever, who never plays.
Yes, who was dropped because they can't trust him. Literally,
doesn't even know where the line of scrimmage is.
They actually, it's not like they didn't even try and hide it and say, "Oh no, he's carrying a bit of a knock. We didn't want to risk."
They're like,
they purposely went out and saying, "We can't trust him."
They can't.
They just said,
but they had to be honest, because the last time they said, "Oh, he has a bit of an injury," he was on every social media platform. I'm not injured. I'm perfectly healthy. Yeah. We'll find him. We'll scratch your ass for this game. How about that?
Yeah. But like that as well, that's one place. Wide receiver, if you can get someone decent. Now, look, listen, they traded away Tyreek Hill and they've won 2 Super Bowls in 2 years. I trust that Brad Veach, I think is the GM's name. I trust that he knows what he's doing. On the defensive side of things, is Chris Jones going to continue? If so, perfect. You'd like maybe to get if you can find a potential blue chip D lineman to go with him. And then the biggest thing is to talk to Andy Reid and ask him and tell him, you cannot retire yet. There's some murmurings the last few weeks that he may do it if they won. We haven't heard anything. Obviously, they still have to have their parade tomorrow and stuff like that. So no announcement will be made, at least for, I'd imagine, 2 weeks or something like that. But, that make sure when he leaves the building to go on his holidays, he's coming back. Because if they want to three-peat, they're going to need to keep him there.
Three-peat, that's the word I was looking for earlier.
Yeah.
Triple repeat? Wasn't that what you said?
I think
triple-peat.
They have to be worried about their free agency list, because almost every defender worth the damn is a free agent for the Chiefs this year.
Hey, but
and they have,
other than money, Al, it's real easy to re-sign guys when you're like, psst, we're back-to-back champs. You won another Super Bowl ring. You play for us, and that's the only chance you have.
You say that, but I mean, Chris
Also, there's
Jones
like
was only on
80
a 1 year. He was just like, no, I don't care that we're
He
Super
seems
Bowl
like
champs.
a super
I
stroppy
want.
fella, like super highly strung. Like.
Well, I mean, top 2 defensive tackle in the league. Give him his money.
Mhm.
Shut up and give him his money.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
care. Give him
You
his
can
money.
buy more guns and show them off.
You're a billionaire.
Yeah.
Give him his money. Shut up.
But I think there's a lot of money in that Mahomes contract as well that they can just kick down the road to free up some space.
Who, by the way, was talking about he wants more money, so get ready to pay him $70 million a year. Thanks very much.
And you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll probably
I'd say
he will.
they go
He'll
down
probably be the
Ohtani
first
route.
$1 billion contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But get him
He
to
will
defer
be
it
the
all
first
until he's like 55.
Yeah, exactly.
You've already
yeah,
told the
do
Chiefs
what
it's
they
some other
did.
bum's
I-
problem.
I don't watch much baseball, but I don't watch any baseball. But there was a player that a team signed, and over the next, I think, like 5 years, he'll get $2 million, and then he's going to get $70 million at the end of his contract.
That's what I was talking about. Shohei Ohtani. He's
Yeah.
he's on a massive contract, but he's only earning $5 million over the next 5 years. So yeah,
That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, look, I have to say, in this Super Bowl, I was a 49ers fan, and the reason I was is purely because, as we've discussed, the Chiefs are so well set up to be Super Bowl champs for the next maybe decade if things go the right way for them. That I just wanted, I wasn't nervous about the amount of chances they've had to win a Super Bowl. I just wanted somebody else to win it, just to feel like there was at least some competition from the NFC side of things. So I like the narrative of Purdy going from Mr. Irrelevant to winning the Super Bowl the next year. I thought that was cool. But anyway, I had no real allegiance to the 49ers other than just to keep the narrative a bit spicy. Rain, where is the answer going to come from the NFC? Do you see anybody, like, for instance, in your way too early predictions for next season's Super Bowl, is there anybody that you feel is even close enough to start to compete with the Chiefs? And if you say the
There
Panthers, I'm
absolutely
going
is.
to break your legs.
No, I'm obviously not going to say the Panthers. But my answer is probably going to be just as infuriating. I think it's the Green Bay Packers. They
For
have
fuck's sake.
a very, very
I
young
agree.
and talented wide receiver core. Jordan Love is getting better and better. The guy
They got
looks
rid
like
of
he could be a
MVS. That's a
superstar.
huge deal.
Yep, got rid of MVS. Cashed in early on him. Yeah, look, if they can improve that O line, maybe get some help on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be in a position to really, really challenge next year. I think. I hope. But yeah, I mean, it's the AFC side. They're just so strong at the moment. And does anybody even match up with the Chiefs though? Like the Bengals, Joe Burrow definitely
they have
has that
Mahomes,
edge that he
basically.
could. Yeah, Mahomes is just too good. He's too good. So I can see them going to Super Bowls for the next 10 years, and every so often the NFC will win one. But my choice going into next year is going to be the Green Bay Packers.
Well,
I
we'll go around
agree.
the room. Al, you're going to go for the Packers as well. Have you got anyone else that's on your watch list, so to speak, for next season?
I'm going to go for the Packers or the Lions. They had some, holes this year, and they made some mistakes, but they almost beat the 49ers, and so did the Packers. The Packers were a play away, and a really lucky reception from Ayuk away from beating them. I think either of those teams could compete. Whether they can compete with the FC, I don't know. But they'll certainly be in the mix next year for the 1 seed in the NFC.
Just
Sorry,
before we move on from
Yeah, go
the Packers, I think one thing that's going to stand to them if they do make it to that Super Bowl, and it is against the Chiefs, is they're a very well-coached team. Matt LaFleur is very good at kind of disguising offensive plays, and it's very difficult to pick up on their blitz packages as well. On the defensive side of the ball, with coaching like that, if they can jump out to a lead, they may be able to hang on. So I'm backing the coaching staff on this one as well.
Dara, you got any interesting names floating around that noggin?
Yeah, not interesting, but I'll definitely put one out there. The Eagles. No, different bird. No,
I'm
I think
predicting
the Eagles like,
to catch Cowboy syndrome and become Bottlerooskies from now on.
I think
Sorry, hold on.
they
Just on that,
yeah.
the 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since 1995, one year before the Cowboys. Why don't they have the same fucking name?
Because they're not as in your face about being America's team. They don't, and because they're a West Coast team, they don't get all the.
You're clearly not an NFC West
time
fan, if you don't think that they're not in your face.
Well, in your division, they're in your face, West, and rightly so, because the Seahawks have no hope. But for the rest of the league,
going back to the Eagles, though, I think that this past season has been a shit show. We saw unfold as the season went on. You know, they lost two key pieces in their offensive and defensive coordinator head coaching gigs. They're bringing in experienced coordinators now. Vic Fangio's going to be looking after that defense. You know, Kellen Moore's looking after the offense. We'll see what happens there. I'm not really holding much hope for that, but if they can sort of get, you know, Jalen Hurts back onto some sort of level that he was at the season before, if Jason Kelce maybe plays one more year, you know, if the defense has weapons, but I'm already I'm talking myself out of this right now, but I'm a little concerned that like the likes of Hassan Reddick has been allowed to seek a trade. So
he denied that today.
Did he?
Yeah, per Jordan Schultz, he said, "No, I fucking didn't. Thanks very much.
Oh, right.
I'm staying with the Eagles."
Okay,
so
well then
someone was lying.
Okay, so I'm talking myself back into it here now with that. But yeah, so like that's a team that could challenge the 49ers. But I want to ask you this question.
Well, hold on, because I have a spicy answer. That's a bit of a
if
hot
you say the
take,
Commanders, I'm going to break your legs.
No, it's not the Commanders. No, but it is probably equally as wild. Bit like Ryan. The Minnesota Vikings without Kirk Cousins. Actually good quarterback. Like Ryan said with the Packers.
Jaden Daniels. If they can trade up to get Jaden Daniels.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to take a miracle for a good one. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be the team next year, but if something miraculous happens and they get a Jared Goff level quarterback that's kind of went under the radar and finds his feet early, like Ryan said with the Packers, they've got a great defense. They've got a great depth in the wide receiver room at the moment with two of the top wide receivers in the league. If you get the right quarterback in there, I think they do so much damage. And it's again, is it up to the Chiefs? I don't know. But certainly I think that's where we could see a new team kind of rise from. At least that's my feeling. Anytime you get that young receiver room, that's what I'm looking at.
Does someone just want to say the Bears now as well, so as we can just
talk the Bears are trash.
NFC North?
The Bears are trash.
Now mentioned 3 teams from the NFC North going to the Super Bowl.
Shane Waldron is their new offensive coordinator. It's not going to work.
Okay, yeah, they're not doing anything.
It's not going to work. But
Did you see
talking about him?
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. Did you see that?
Are we live?
He was asked if you know how does he like the Bears hire, and he was like, well,
he's a great guy.
Is this live? Good luck to y'all.
It's just like he'll love Justin Fields. That's all he said. He'll love Justin Fields. Like, okay, man.
Justin Fields.
He said a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
Right. But Dara, really quickly before we wrap up, what's your round?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this question because I said it after the NFC Championship game that I feared that there could be a bit of a downhill turn for the Lions after losing the game in that way. Do you feel something similar for the 49ers after losing a Super Bowl up by 10 points again to the Chiefs? And especially with that overtime decision by the coaching and the players publicly coming out straight after the game and saying, "Oh, we didn't plan for this," and kind of, I don't think it was an intentional but unintentional sort of throwing their head coach under the bus.
Well, look, I saw on Instagram just before we came on, Shanahan claimed they wanted to have the ball third. They believed both teams would score, and they wanted to have, because the third score, if it was 2 field goals, the third score, field goal would have won the game. You don't get it at fourth possession. So that's what his logic was. But then
it's easy to say that after.
Exactly. And the Chiefs pointed out, well, if we take the ball second and you guys score a touchdown, we'll just score a touchdown and go for 2. So, like, that doesn't make any sense. We'll just make sure you don't get a third possession anyway. But that's where I came from. In terms of hangover, no, I think it's probably a little bit less likely, only because enough random stuff happened in the game that kind of led to the loss, like the missed kick and the muff fumble, as Rian said, which is, it wasn't entirely on the guy receiving the ball, that it's not so deflating. I think it comes along a little bit with, like, the previous season, where they were doing really well in the playoffs and they went through all those QB injuries that ended up playing with, like, they just couldn't get it done. And kind of, you have that excuse where it doesn't deflate the team. It gives you like, well, next year we're going to have that with us and we're going to play better. So maybe they can kind of will themselves to that. Again, this is by no means a science, but that's how I see it playing out, at least.
Right.
Yeah, my own scientific opinion is that the hangover will come because it always does. It always does. The team that loses the Super Bowl is never the same team the next year around, even if they keep hold of all of their players. Will they get there the year after? Yeah, probably they will, because that's how the kind of cycle works. But next year it is going to be so tough because it is so deflating getting all the way to the big game and losing out. And as you said, Fionn, all of those players probably feel like they lost the game instead of just the other team won. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. And I think as well, what Dara said about the Lions is absolutely correct. There is going to be a hangover. Opinions change very quickly in the league. We saw the same thing with Riverboat Ron back in Carolina. Everybody loved him when that was successful, going for 4th downs and all that stuff. But when it stops working, things turn around very quick. You soon become the villain. And I can see that happening with the head coach out there. He's a very likable guy, but if the results keep going the wrong way on these lunatic calls, he's going to end up very quickly being the villain out there in Detroit. So, yeah, I think that's 2 teams who are going to have a hangover next year.
I'll wrap us up.
I think like this coming season is the 49ers' last chance, because this year they have all the current players more or less under contract. You know, they're all pros and pro bowlers. They're all still under contract at reasonable prices. 2025 is when those contracts start to balloon up a bit more, and you're going to have to make some decisions. You know, you're not going to have all these really good players sticking around, you know, making less money. That's just the way the NFL works. They're all pros. They're going to make the Pro Bowls. They're going to want more money. And I don't think the 49ers can afford that. I think 2024 is their last chance at a Super Bowl with this, you know, with the current roster, unless they get real lucky with, you know, your Fred Warners and stuff like that, and Kittles and Deebo Samuels in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds. I don't think past 24 they're going to be able to compete the way they have. They're going to be a good team for a long time. I don't think they're going to be where they are now 2 years down the line.
Dara, what do you think?
Like I said, I think they will. I think there will be some sort of hangover. You can't lose. You can't come this close so many times and then just keep saying, oh, next year we'll do it. Next year we'll do it. Next year we'll do it. You just can't. People are going to get tired of listening to that. And look, I think there's some of their star players are on the decline as well. You know, whereas Trent Williams was never reliable.
Think or hope as a Seahawks fan?
Both. Boats. But no, I think like Trent Williams didn't have his greatest game on Sunday, has shown signs of regression. George Kittle hasn't had a great season, again, emphasized by a lack of production in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. You know, Deebo Samuel has missed multiple games. Then on the defensive side, you know, they've what was meant to be this dominant defensive line with Bosa, Young, Hargrave, Armstead, you know, pieces like Gregory and stuff coming in during the season. They weren't that dominating. Now maybe that's just down to Steve Wilkes, the DC, and we might not see him back next year. But you know, you can't keep going that close, losing, and convincing those same players that, oh yeah, next year we're going to get it. There's going to be something.
There has to be something different to motivate the players. And if they're just going to go, oh, we just got unlucky, that's not motivation. That's regression. So they need to change something, whether that is Steve Wilkes. I don't think Steve Wilkes deserves to lose his job. I think he had a pretty good season as DC. That defense were pretty dominant, albeit the defensive line wasn't the best. That wasn't what it was billed to be. But I mean, they had a pretty good season defensively. So what do you do to change? Like, what is the big change that you're going to make going into next season? And I think they're too good to make any changes, and that's what's going to be what's holding them back.
Well, look, I think there's all that can really be said on the season just gone. The Super Bowl is in the books. Now the teams start to play football on paper, making moves in the offseason in terms of roster spots for free agents returning. You got the draft coming up. I think that evaluation starts around March, April, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's a lot of stuff that remains to be seen. There'll be a lot to talk about that I'm sure will keep the show going as and when new pieces of information come around, like the draft and the free agent signings and all that kind of stuff. But here we love to talk about football, and as one monumental season ends, another one starts. We've got the Irish AFI League 1 and League 2 starting coming up pretty soon. I believe the first couple of games is the second week in March. We start to get some games all around Ireland. The first week in March, we start to get games all around Ireland. I believe there's 2 games in the top division and 2 games in Division 1. Am I correct? Why am I blanking on the top SBC, the Shamrock Bowl Conference?
SBC.
And
the division you play in, Phil.
The division I now play in, yeah. And Division 1. So stick with us, guys, because we are going to give you as much content as we possibly can. The AFI has been compressed into those 2 leagues, as we said. So we're going to focus on both individually, give plenty of time. We've got some fantastic new additions to our pundit panels who are going to give great insights, not just around the league, but also kind of diversifying a little bit the soundboard that you have here. We're going to be looking at a lot of different teams around the league, getting some fantastic guests. So please do join us. The content here at Under Center Podcast does not end just because the NFL season is over. We'll be bringing you those shows, hopefully 2 shows a week, all the way through the AFI season, right up until, is it May, Dara, that the Shamrock Bowl is around?
No, it's not until like July, August.
July, August. My dates are all over the place. Don't listen to me. Dara will make sure they're all on the socials. Keep track of the socials. But from all of us here at the end of the NFL season, Rian, Al, and Dara, thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can catch us here at the Under Center Podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. Get us on YouTube, Under Center Podcast. We're also on Instagram and X at Under Center Pod. And you can join us there, join the conversation, ask questions, reach out if you want to talk about some off-season NFL stuff, you want to talk about the AFI, you just want to know where your local team is. If you need to know anything, if you're interested in playing American football, let us know. There's teams up the north, there's teams in the Republic as well. So there's plenty of venues for everyone who's interested in playing. There's coaching, there's refereeing, there's videography, there's all sorts of areas that you can get involved in American football in Ireland. Every team would love to have you. So please do reach out and talk. But that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for joining the lads. And we'll see you next week as we prepare for the AFI season.